of it's twofold, two parts. The first part is the laws of a zealot. Laws of a zealot are as Bishus Rosh Yeshiva will be able to testify, it's a very dangerous subject because zealots, by definition, a person feels, oh, I'm a zealot. So, and we have to know what the root of the zealot is and where the zealot's, his or her behavior comes from. Like, what's the, and of course, this has to do with this week's parsha because this week's parsha is Parshas Pinchas, which is a continuation of the story of the end of last week's parsha, which is what happened, unfortunately, in the story of Bilam. So Bilam advises, like we learned last week, the Gemara, we learned a different Gemara than Sanhedrin. We're going to be in Sanhedrin, but a different chapter. We're in the earlier chapter, and it's page 80, starts on page 81b. So let's bring up the text here. The Gemara in last week we learned about that the idea of that was given to Balak and Moab and Midian to go send their daughters out to corrupt the Jewish people was an idea that was given by Bilam. And Bilam gives this idea, and because of it, he himself is killed in the war in Midian later, that we learn about in Parshas Matos. That's next week's Parsha. And of course, there's the great revenge, and this is a great sin. This is after him, it's a great sin for a lot of reasons. The sin of the Pa'or is not just a sin because of another sin. It's the type of sin it was, at the time that it was, the people that it was involved. Like we're going to learn about Zimri, of course, was the Nasi. This was something that cut deep. And Pinchas was the man of the moment, really, the person who was able to have clarity of what to do. But the problem with the zealot is that we have to be very clear that a zealot is not something that has to come from the right place, and it's to be very careful. Unfortunately, sometimes people take it the wrong way. All right, so we're going to start with the Mishnah that deals with the laws of a zealot. It's not just the zealot of the story of Pinchas, there's other situations. For instance, the Mishnah says, Hagoyne v'sakasva. Kasva is a kind of article, a keli, a vessel of the Beis Hamikdash. Someone steals something from the Beis Hamikdash.
We're on the page.
So it's 81b. It's in the same Mishnah. With regard to one who steals a kasva, that's on the left-hand side. You see it? Scroll down. It's towards the bottom of the page. Okay. So Goynev is a kasva. Someone steals a kasva, which is a kind of, we're going to go, the first part of the Mishnah, we're going to kind of go through fast. Then we're going to get to our piece, which is the story of the zealot, dealing with those, with what is the law about also of intermarriage or relationships with non-Jewish women. I mean, it's unfortunately a subject. So one who steals a kasva, v'amakalel b'koisem, one who curses. The Gemara discusses different opinions of how you curse, but one way or another, you're cursing God through witchery, through magic. Bahaboila Ramas, or someone who has relations with a non-Jewish woman, intercourse with a non-Jewish woman, then Kana'im Pog'in Bo. The zealot strikes that person. Okay, go ahead. Zealot is a Kanai. What's another word for Kanai? Enthusiastic is a light word, but someone who's over enthusiastic for the law, someone who feels like they can't take that God's name is being desecrated, so they have to do something about it. The problem is that usually Judaism is very strict to keep things orderly, that there's a structure, there's the courts, there's the system. People shouldn't take the law in their own hand because a zealot is taking the law in their own hand. So what is the only law we have where people get involved in executing punishment is the case of Goel Hadam. Goel Hadam is the person who's a family member who, even if you killed someone by mistake, right? You mistakenly kill someone. So what do? We all know, we're going to learn about this in the Devarim coming up. You run to the city of refuge, right? That's your place of refuge. But until you get to the city of refuge, if you decide to leave the city of refuge, then there's the mitzvah of the Goel Hadam. I mean, someone who's a family member wants to avenge. Goel Hadam means to avenge the blood of your family. It's a mitzvah, and you have the right to do it. And if that's why they had very wide streets, roads to get to a normal street should be 16 amas, let's say 25 feet, and a road that led to a city of refuge had to be double that, 32 amas, which would be, let's say, 50 feet. So it should be really in the signs. But until you made it there, your blood was available for someone to take vengeance for. And so there the Torah allows for, really in some way, that the family members are exercising revenge. That's a very dangerous place of ground, but the Torah allows it. Besides for that, we have a structure, we have the laws, and if there's a punishment, it has to happen. The punishment gets executed by the system, which is the Sanhedrin, and the people who work on behalf of the Sanhedrin. Of course, the people of the Sanhedrin themselves may not be the people that are pushing you off a mountain for skila or what have you, but it's done in a way like in any court system. But where we get to, it gets complicated, is in our Mishnah. So someone who steals something from the Beis HaMikdash, or someone who curses in a way of witchery with magic, cursing Hashem, and someone who has intercourse with an Aramis, with a non-Jewish woman. So Kana'im Pog'in Bo, the Zealot strikes this person. Aramis is a non-Jew, non-Jewish woman. Now, the problem gets even more complicated. The problem is more complicated because these are not necessarily laws where a person is, that the Beis Din, it's not like you're getting ahead of the Beis Din. Sometimes it's like you're getting ahead of the courts. It means the courts really would put this person to death. But the courts are not going to put this person to death. They didn't get a chance yet. You jumped ahead and did it. The question is, it's not so clear according to the rabbis in discussion if any of these cases are something that the courts would put you to death. Goyal Aram is definitely the courts don't put you to death. In a best case possible scenario would be in a case of kares, which you get disconnected. But these are not cases where necessarily where a person is going to be put to death by the courts, for sure not, and even by God. So here we're talking about someone who's taking not just the law in their own hand; they're exercising a punishment that the law wouldn't even do, not even from God. It's a discussion. Now, what we're going to come at the end is when it comes to intercourse with a Gentile, you could only, and it's very complicated laws, and therefore Pinchas had to do, when Pinchas killed Zimri, and the question is, why did he kill the woman? She wasn't Jewish. Why did she kill her? It's not even so simple why he killed her. How was he allowed to kill her? He should have only killed Pinchas. We'll give him right to kill the woman. So that's another discussion, but we'll get to that in a second. But when Pinchas kills Zimri, he has to kill him in the act while he's in the middle of his intercourse. Otherwise, he'd get punished for killing someone out of place. So it's very complicated, and therefore he did a whole kind of scheme in order to be able to do it that way. God intervened to make a lot of miracles for it to work out, so to say, because of the Chilul Hashem, because of the desecration of God's name. What happened? It wasn't just someone. You have to remember something. One thing about I missed out when it comes to Kana'im Pog'in Bo, especially about a boil aramis. It's not just having sex with a woman in your bedroom. That's no one could come and pound down your door and be a kanoi. We're talking about a person who does it publicly in front of 10 Jews, which is obviously desecration of God's name. So it's not just that you're having relations with a non-Jewish woman, you're having relations in a way that's desecrating God's name. You're doing it in public, and public means not in front of Gentiles. It has to be 10 Jewish people. That's Bechlal, the law of Kiddush Hashem. That's an Eidah, that's a congregation. Less than 10 is individuals.
Males or 10 Jews?
Good question. I would assume 10 males. I'm going to check while we're learning. It could be, in this case, it's not 10 males. It could be 10 people, but it says Esra Anashim. So the next case is Kohen Shishimish Betuma. If a Kohen knowingly is impure, goes into the temple and serves, which is the right of the Kohen to serve, but not when you're impure. You can't be impure in service. The law would be that he would go to court and get lashes. So the mission is not saying a halachah. We'll see Rashi changes what I'm saying, but just the actual text of the law of the Mishnah says basically a fact that ein echav kohanim v'nois lebezdin. And so the Rambam writes that kohanim wouldn't bring him to court to get lashes. What would happen? The young, enthusiastic Kohanim would take him outside because he couldn't do anything inside the temple and bash his head in, to put it nicely. So they never, again, the law would be he would go to the courts and get lashes, but they never brought him to court. The Mishnah says it matter-of-factly. It seems like it unfortunately could have happened more than once. Zor sheshimish b'mikdash. What about a non-Kohen who serves in the Beis HaMikdash? So Rabbi Akivah says, B'chenek, punishment is choking by death. It's not something that happens by the Bezdin, it happens by God. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Let's just remember, as glorious as we would like to believe the temple times were, there were some days that weren't so glorious, and there was many times in history where people did things they shouldn't be doing, both in service, both in high priest. I mean, let's just be honest, right? The king Uzziyahu, who was a righteous king, did a service in the temple. He was struck with leprosy immediately. So it's not something that was uncommon. You have to remember something. This is, again, in the same category of the zealot, is in the character of the person is someone who would want to, the zealot who's not a real zealot. A real zealot is Pinchas. You have a lot of people who will project themselves as zealots, but there's really something going on inside that you need to get out in anger or whatever it is. Same thing as with the Kohen. You have people that are not Kohanim, and you think, right? If you're serving God, so you should serve God, but God wants you to serve him. And if God says only a Kohen can serve, why you want to serve? But that's just not the way people are, unfortunately. All right. So Rashi says, I just want to read just one Rashi. Rashi says two things I want to say. You asked what's an Aramis. Rashi's wording of what Aramis is, a woman who worships idols, which means there's a little room in this Rashi. He doesn't say anyone who's not Jewish. He says anyone who's a daughter who serves idols. I'm not going to add to that, but I'm just saying the wording, the text, what Rashi says. Now, Rashi says, what is a kanoi? A kanoi means that b'nei adam kisherim, you have to be a worthy person. To be a zealot, you say, I'm a zealot for God. You have to look at yourself deep in the mirror to know if you're really a zealot. Hamiskanim kinose shamakim. That what is the word kanoi comes from the word jealousy. You're taking the jealousy of the Lord. Pog'in Bo b'shatz shiroi misamaisa. Then you could act. And the problem is that the laws of the zealot are very complicated because no one will tell you to do it. It's halachah bein marim kain, which means you go to the court. You say, "Could I be a zealot?" We're not going to tell you what. No one takes responsibility. It's totally on you. It's halachah bein marim kain. You won't get a psak. No Rav is going to tell you to go do it. And that's why it's very complicated because he went to Moshe. Pinchas went to Moshe. Moshe answered him, but he didn't say do it. He just said, "Yeah, you're right, but that's the law." That's the law, but he didn't say do it. So here he says, but Rashi says, what is a kanoi? Again, it's a very dangerous subject because people could step over the line. So you have to look deep into yourself to make sure that's who you are. B'nei ksherim, you have to be a kosher person, meaning everything about you is right, and your act is only because of the sake of God. Pog'in b'shas shiroi mitzvahs, and then you act when you see the action happen. But afterwards, then it's not something there's no more zealotry and there's no more bezdin than whatever the law in the bezdin is. But bezdin is not going to put that person to death. And this is a law that came down from Moshe and Sinai, that it was about a zealot could act on these cases. He became a Kohen.
Would those zealots become tamei because they just killed a person?
Excellent question. A zealot would become tamei in theory, yes. But Pinchas wasn't a Kohen at the time. But even a Kohen could fight in a war. So that's a good question. Okay, so we're going to go through it. Everyone, the Rabbi Steinsaltz's footnotes over here. He's telling us at the kasva what it is, the material. I just want to read the part that's connected to us. So the footnote number 3 in English from Rabbi Steinsaltz is one who engages in intercourse with the Gentile woman. Okay, so Rabbi Steinsaltz is not translating like I translate Rashi, the daughter of a idol worshiper. He's taking it the way we all understand it to be a Gentile woman. Whether he marries her or not, if he engages his intercourse with her in the presence of 10 or more Jews, it has to be in public, 10 more Jews, like Louis' question seemingly will assume it's 10 men. Zealots strike him, and whoever kills him is praiseworthy. So says the Rambam in Sefer Kedusha, Hilchos Isuri Bia, chapter 12, law 4. Okay, and so it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, this law. So again, the zealot has to be a person of interest.
you know somebody close to the Pinchas, but he's happening. This is common.
I wouldn't say common, but I'm not sure if he's only. According, we're going to see, it's brought down that the Maccabees were zealots. In Hanukkah, Matisyahu was a zealot. He killed the Kohen that served impure on the temple. They really brought this law in under the Maccabees. Not just that the temple wasn't pure, Judaism was corrupt. Right, a lot of Jews fell for Greek philosophy, and there was the can't pronounce it. Mityavnim, how do you say Mityavnim? Those are people that were the Jews that were acting like Greeks. So they had more than just to protect the temple. They had to protect Judaism, and they passed laws. One of the laws that they passed was the more to be much more severe with having relations with non-Jewish women. But this, they say, comes with the story that Matisyahu was also a zealot. So he was considered, the Maccabees were considered in some ways a zealot. But I think throughout history, there were people that were zealots that are. In what specific case are you talking about? Or just in general to his attitude?
In general, because it's always out there.
Fighting the wars of God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Elijah the prophet was a zealot. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm a zealot for God. I mean, what did he do? He didn't strike anyone maybe physically. He took away the key of rain. For 3 years, there was no rain in Israel. That was horrible effects. We know the effects of the famine. He had the characteristics of a zealot. I don't know if the characteristics of a zealot. Okay.
Zealot is very positive.
The Rambam says, what did we just quote from the Rambam? The Rambam says it's praiseworthy. But again, it's a very tricky question. You have to have such obvious, you have to be really traditionally a person who has tremendous obvious Yisrael. That's why we talk about Pinchas. Pinchas was a Kohen. He was a grandson of Aaron. He's a person who the Rebbe always talked about it. He came from love. He didn't come from a bad family. He didn't come from violent people. No, but he wasn't a Kohen before. He got it, but he came from Kohenim. You know, this is the joke. My father's a Kohen, my grandfather was a Kohen, my great grandfather's a Kohen. I'm just not a Kohen. He wasn't a Kohen, but he was not. But he came from the family. His grandfather was Aaron. Technically, halachically, he wasn't a Kohen because there's two answers to that question. The technical answer was that they named Aaron and his 4 sons Kohanim, and anyone who was born after that. Pinchas was in between. He was born before, and he's not mentioned. So his brothers were Kohanim, if he had younger brothers. I don't know if he did. His nephews and nieces, his nephews were Kohanim. He was like the only sore thumb that wasn't a Kohen. He was the black sheep, so to say. And they gave him a hard time. He wasn't a celebrated person. He's like that black sheep. But at the end, the real reason given was that God saved it for him. He protected that honor for him to be gifted it after that he should earn it, not just be born into it. Okay. So we're going to go down. I just want to read one more footnote from Steinsaltz, because the idea of mafsiin es moichei bigzirin, that if they found a person that served impure, a Kohen who served impure, that they pierced his skull with wood, meaning they beat him. The Ran comments that this too is halachah transmitted from Moshe from Sinai, and that it is permitted for zealots to harm him. He is handed over to the special judgment of the priests to eradicate the evil from their midst. Some explain that since he is liable to receive death at the hands of heaven, it's as though the zealots are killing a treifa. So that's, some people want to say in the case of the Kohen, that he's anyways a marked person. So they're killing a marked person. The halachah usually is that if you kill a dead person, if you kill a person, it's a treifa. Treifa means like an animal who can't live it out. You're very sick. So you're not. If we learn in Sanhedrin, it's not considered murder because the person's going to die anyways. So that's why the whole question of assisted suicide, all these questions come up in this law. But in the case of the Kohen, he's not sick, but he's going to be killed by the Beis Din or by God. So they kind of are killing a marked person. But that's the Radbaz. But the simple law is that the way the Mishnah says it, the Pirchei Kahuna, the young zealots of the Kohanim, took it in their own hand. Okay, just want to read one more footnote, then I'm going to go to our case. In the case where the ruling zealot strikes him, one is entitled to strike a transgressor only during the violation of the transgression. This is important. You can only do it while it's happening. Again, there's another condition. It has to be public in front of 10 men. If the transgressor completed or interrupted the action and the zealots killed him anyways, the zealot is liable to be executed for murder. So if that's the whole case, it had Zimri stopped intercourse, and then Pinchas acted in an act of zealot and killed him, Pinchas would have been a murderer. That's why he had to catch him in the act. If the zealot seeks permission from the court does not grant him permission. You go to the court and say, "What should I do? What's the law?" No, we're not going to tell you. If you're asking, it's not for you. You're not a zealot. The zealots may attack him only if he first warned him to desist. You have to tell him to stop doing it. If the transgressor seeks to save himself from the zealot and kills him, he's not liable to be executed. This is another important law that happened to Pinchas as well. If, let's say, Zimri would turn around and he had a knife on him, and he sees Pinchas coming to kill him, and he just takes and kills Pinchas, he would be okay, because Pinchas had the law of a rodef. A rodef, he was trying to kill him, he's protecting himself. That's why it's very complicated laws.
But Pinchas, I don't remember where it says that Pinchas warned Zimri before he impaled him.
Well, he says he has to warn him.
But where in the Torah doesn't say he warned him? It seems like he just went in there and did his evil deed.
Let's see. We're going to get this story. It's a good question. I don't know if the text shows that he warned them. That's a good question. I don't know if the text shows that he warned them. We can assume that the thing is that the Gemara does say that Zimri, it was a miracle that Zimri didn't call out to his fellow. We're going to see the setting in a second. It was a very complicated setting. All right. So the bottom of the page is going to go scroll down to the bottom of the page, then we'll move to the next page. The Gemara says, Boy mine Rav Kana mi Rav. Okay. Rav Kana asks from Rav. We skip to the next page. What is the law if the zealot doesn't kill a person who has intercourse with a Gentile woman in public in front of 10 people? What's the punishment? Okay, we know if the zealot, but what about if there is no zealot? No one's a zealot for God. What's the law then? What's the actual law? So Rav Kana asked this question of Rav. So in Shei Rav the Gomeri, Rav forgot the law. He don't remember what the law is. Ikru Rav Kana bechelmei. So Rav Kana has a dream, and in his dream he reads a verse, and they read a verse to him in the dream, and in the dream they read a verse that says as follows: Bogda Yehuda v'toyeva ne'esesa b'Yisrael. We'll translate in a second. Ub'Yishlayim ki chil Yehuda kodesh Hashem asher oyev u'bal beis u'ba'al bas kel neichar. Which means the verse says Judah is dealt with Bogda, with treachery, and abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem. As Judah has profaned the sacred of the Lord, which he loves, and is engaged in intercourse with the daughters of strange God. Okay, that's what he hears the pasuk. So when he comes to Rav Kana, comes to Rav, and he says, "This is what I dreamt. I had a dream about this verse. What does this verse mean?" At the end of the verse, it says that he has intercourse with a daughter of someone who serves an idol worshiper. So then Rav Kana says, "Oh, I remember the law. What is the law? The Bogda Yehuda, when it's talking about the Jewish people were trespassers against God, that is, that they served idols. Avodah zarah. Like it says, Begadetem bi beis Yisrael, that the Jewish people rebelled. They were rebellious against God by serving idols. What does it mean? Toyeves nesesa b'Yisrael b'Yisraelim, that there was an abomination amongst the Jewish people in Jerusalem. Mishkav zakar, homosexuality was happening. So that was another thing. There's a pasuk that shows that the word toyeva, abomination, is referring to homosexuality. What does it mean that you were desecrating the name of God? Zaina, that they were sleeping with prostitutes. Like it says, lo yekadesha. Kadesha means also that she's not being holy, she's the opposite of holy. Ubal bas el aside from having to do with prostitutes, the prostitutes unfortunately evidently could have been Jews, because otherwise it would be the same thing. That they were having relations with non-Jewish women. The question is if it makes a difference if they were married or not. That's halachically a question, if it makes a difference if a non-Jewish woman is married or not. But seemingly the verse is just they're having relations with non-Jewish women. Then we have another pasuk. What happens to such a person? So it has a person who does these things, serves idols, homosexuality, an abundance of prostitution, and sleeping with non-Jewish women gets kares. So here we know that if you desecrate God's name in public by having intercourse with non-Jewish women, then it's punishable by kares. That's God. So the zealot is kares means to be cut off from Judaism, which is in temple times. A person who got kares, it's actually today's chitas. A person who got kares was didn't live out past 50 or 60 years old. The question is why today people could live longer even though they do things that are punishable by kares. But kares is a kind of punishment from God, which is more than just death from heaven. It's more severe because it affects your soul. So disconnected, cut off. If you're connected, Jewish people are like a string. Chevel Yaakov is the string of Yaakov. So if you cut the string, what happens to the bottom part of the rope? It's not connected anymore. That's kares is a very severe punishment. The only two positive commandments that are connected to kares are a person who doesn't dies without circumcision, and a person who does not keep the laws of Passover, the Passover lamb. Okay. So the Gemara says in Talmud Chacham, who if he's a wise person, if he's a scholar, he won't have children that are wise. He won't have any conversation with the students. If he's a kohen, he won't be able to bring sacrifices. His children. Okay, so now we're going to continue. We have a half hour, so we'll try to get through as much of the Gemara with some insight. Rabbi Baravo says this: Kol habal anachris, if you have relations with a non-Jewish woman, ki ilu mischaten b'avodah zarah, as if you made a marriage with idols. It says ubal bas kel noicher. You had beila means you had intercourse, and it says also el noicher, another god. The idol doesn't have a daughter. If you have relations with the non-Jewish woman, it's like engaging yourself in relations with the idol. I'm going to say yes, but I'm not. I'm going to say yes on the technical side. The Rav could answer better. I'm going to say yes on the technical side, because just that it's clear that the Torah says clearly about this, that it's punishable by death. It's more severe, but it could. But spiritually, I can't answer that.
Hello?
Okay. Well, Rabbi Baravo says like this. This is a side piece of Gemara, but it's interesting to learn. Kasev al Gulgota Ishal Yahayakim. Yahayakim was, I don't think many historians will argue with me, possibly the worst king of David. The family of David. He's one of the last kings. He's what they call the Jewish Caligula. He's just he's totally out of control. He fights God. He does things just to upset God. He was really horrible. He was the third to last king. He was taken by the Babylonians. He doesn't get a burial. He does. I mean, the Torah is he's the one who wanted to kill Yirmiyahu. He's a really horrible king. The final king is, of course, then his son Yechaniah comes king. He does repentance, and then Tzidkiyahu is the final king. But they're all the descendants of Yirmiyahu. So he says Zois v'oidacheres. It says about him, he's going to get punished and another punishment. What's the other punishment? So it says, Rashi says, I don't know what Rashi is, is maybe a Messiah. Rashi says, Rabbi Bar Abba is the grandfather of Rav Preda. It's a famous Gemara. So I don't know why they can't just say Rabbi Bar Abba, but they say the grandfather of Rav Preda. Eshkachahu Gulgasa. He finds a skull. The Habas Shadi B'Shar Yerushalayim that was lying by the gates of Jerusalem. V'Habakasiv Ilavehu, and it was written on it or around it, the verse that the prophet says about Yehoyakim, Zois v'oidacheres, he's going to be punished and another punishment. He felt bad. This is he sees a skull. Kovra, he buries it. Right? What do you do if you see someone who doesn't get burial? He buries it. You have to remember, in best case scenario, this story happens 500 to 600 years after the passing of or the killing of Yehoyakim. He was killed by the Babylonians. Bahadar Navuge comes up again. It doesn't stay buried. It pops up. Cover v'hadinavog, he buries it again, and it pops up again. Omar, he says, "Oh, I know who owns this, who's this skull belong to. Hi Gulgosa Shal Yayakim. This must be the skull of Yayakim. The Chsiv Kvuras Chamari cover. He's gonna be buried like a donkey that doesn't get a proper burial. That the prophet says Yayakim doesn't deserve even a proper burial. It's going to be thrown into the gates of Jerusalem. That must be his skull. That's why he won't stay buried." So he says, Amar Malkahu, he's a king. It's not proper. He should be shamed this way, even though he was a bad king. I mean, he literally represented everything that you could do horrible. But Rapreda's grandfather said he still deserves some level of respect. Shakla karcha b'sharaya, he wraps it in a silk cloth, and he placed it in a chest to give it some sort of, shouldn't be kicked around and played soccer ball. What happens? It's an interesting Gemara. Asya devaisu chazaisa. She comes home. His wife comes home. Imagine your wife comes home. She's going through your closet, and she sees you have a skull wrapped in silk. I'm sure that's not going to be great for Shalom Bayis, right? So Nafka Amrlu Lishivaisa, she comes and she says to her friend, "What do you think this is?" I came home, I found my husband has a skull wrapped in the cupboard. So so the friend says to her, to his wife, now evidently this is his grandfather's second wife. Oh, who's that skull? Hi, the Itza Kamaisahi. This is the skull of his first wife. So she's, he's causing real Shalom Bayis problems. He never forgot about his first wife. He has her skull in the house. He can't get over hers. He's not forgotten her. So she's offended. I know. I've heard once of a woman who, it makes sense. She remarries she gets married a second time to a man who lost his wife. She demanded that everything's cleared out of the house, all the dishes, and she wants everything new. You don't have them. So you definitely don't want your husband's previous wife, even if she just passed away, skull in the house. Obviously, it's not something that's great. So what did she do? So she put it in the oven, she burnt it. She said like that. So Kiyasa Amar, when Rabbi's grandfather saw it happen, he realized this is what it means. God made it. It's not going to happen. Yehoiakim is not going to have Yehoiakim again. He was a horrible king, and Yirmiyahu says he's going to have a punishment and another punishment, acheres. And the second punishment was that his skull was burnt in an oven because the woman thought, yes, the Gemara says the story.
It's the first wife's skull that was burnt in the oven.
No, it wasn't. She thought it was. She didn't know that he found the skull and it was Yehoiakim's. He only kept it because he didn't feel it was appropriate that a king's skull should be lying on the floor. So he put it. He doesn't tell his wife. The wife finds it. She goes to the neighbor, and the neighbor tells her that that's the old wife's skull. The moral of the story is, if you have to, for whatever reason, God forbid, keep a skull in your house, you should notify your wife of it, so there's no this misunderstanding.
Is that what the old wife thing?
I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're back to the law. What happened? So again, at the time of the Chashmonaim, the kings of the Chashmonaim, again, there's a pivotal time in Jewish history, because in Jewish history, the Jews were Hellenized, and they were going into Greek philosophy and behavior, and the Chashmonaim, like Ezra the scribe, had to set the Judaism straight. So they made a gzeira. This is a law that's applicable till today. And this was established in the time of the Second Temple, that a person may think, forget the Gemara that we learned until now, that we said maybe it's kares, because it's only kares if it's in front of 10 people. What happens if a person has a relationship with a non-Jewish woman? So the Chashmonaim wanted to make it severe. So they said it is having to do with a woman who is after her period, which is halachically not allowed to have relations with a woman who's a nida, and she's like a shivcha, she's like a maid servant, goya, eshes ish, and she's like a married woman. So they make it very severe to have the Chashmonaim. Again, your question, if there were zealots in the time of of in the history. So if you look, we're not going through the whole thing, but in the middle of the footnote over here from Rabbi Steinsaltz, it says it's reported that Matisyahu himself had slain a Jew who dared to offer sacrifice to a pagan god on the temple altar. So again, Matisyahu was a zealot. So he was a descendant of the Kana'im. I don't know if he was from Pinchas himself, but he was a descendant of the Kana'im. Okay. So now there's a question. This is an interesting question. Kiyase Rabin Amr Mishum Nida Shivcha Goya Zoina. It's like having to do with a prostitute, but not Mishum Ishus. Less than. Why? The question is, halachically, what makes a non-Jewish woman married? The Torah says a woman who's a non-Jewish woman who's married to a non-Jew, if she has relations outside her marriage, I mean, there was marriage according to Torah, even by Gentiles. But the divorce process is a little more complicated because she doesn't need a get. So kind of according to halacha, the very fact that she's having relations with the Jew, although it's possible, unfortunately, that the Jew could be raping her, but let's say it's not, that itself means that she already left her husband. So it's not a question of marriage, but still there's nida, there's shivcha, there's goya. Okay. So now we're going to, so we've established the fact that two things we've established. Number one is that a kanoi, if someone is a zealot and sees a person desecrating a chil Hashem, meaning you are desecrating God's name by taking a non-Jew in front of 10 people, 10 Jews in public, which is desecrating God's name, then Zimri, then a zealot will kill her. That's the Mishnah. We ask the question, what is in general the law if there's no zealot? So then there's koris, but koris seemingly means you get cut off by God, is only, again, the person who makes the chil Hashem, does it in public. Now, what does public mean? If you have a celebrity, and the celebrity is a known person, and everyone knows that this celebrity who's Jewish is married or has relations with non-Jews, that considered a chil Hashem in public. That has to be discussed, because it means the person saying I'm married people have relations, everyone knows about it. I mean, most people have private lives. Most people, don't have a public life. But if you're a public figure and if that's considered the chil Hashem like koris, you have to ask your local rabbi. This halachah class is a Talmud class. But clearly, one thing's for sure: the Chashmonaim made another law that even if it's private, having a relation with a non-Jewish woman is like having a relation with a nida, goya, shivcha, possibly eshes. So you have a lot of violations, even if it's not a public setting. Now the question is, what we have to ask is about the zealot. We said that it's a halachah of ein moirim kid, means it's a halach, but no one's going to tell you it's the law. No one's going to tell you to do it. How does that work? So Amr Chisda says, Habal li malech, if a person comes and asks the court, what's the law? Ein moirin, we don't instruct him to be a zealot. Again, it's also brought down from a second source. That's only the zealot is on their own. The zealot's on your own, so you have to be sure A, that you're doing is right, and B, if you're asking for instruction, then leave the zealot to someone else. We're all on it. He says, now he says something else. More than that. She'im perish Zimri v'hareg the Pinchas. What would happen if Zimri turns around and kills Pinchas? Pinchas is coming to kill him. We're going to see how he killed him. He comes to kill him. Ne'ereg alav. She'im perish Zimri v'hareg Pinchas. Sorry. If Zimri pulls out and he's not in the act of intercourse and Pinchas still kills him, ne'ereg alav. He's a murderer. He gets killed. He's considered a Ritzeach. Pinchas would have been a Ritzeach because he didn't kill him in the act. Nefech Zimri v'hareg Pinchas. If Zimri turns around and kills Pinchas in self-defense, ein ergelav. Zimri is not punished because Pinchas is a rodeh. Sharei roidefu. He's a seek. He's a pursuer. And the law of a pursuer is that if someone's pursuing to kill you, and like we learned in Sanhedrin, and you're sure, and the only way to stop him is to kill him, you're allowed to kill him. So the question is, what would happen if the other Jews killed Pinchas?
Why didn't they?
They didn't know. It's a miracle.
It was the leader. Saul was going on. Why didn't they come to the
The Gemara addresses that question. But it's a good question. But the question is, could they kill Pinchas? Why should they?
Yeah.
Because like Louis says, they were in on it. His tribe members were in on it.
Really? Right.
Yeah, but they were also having relations with non-Jewish.
Oh.
It was a whole public setting. It wasn't. So if the question is, what would happen if the tribe of Shimon, he was in the tribe of Shimon, if his fellow tribesmen killed Pinchas, they're not allowed to kill Pinchas. Why? It's an interesting law it's brought down. Everyone could be a Kana'im, like you said. Everyone should kill Zimri. Everyone should be a Zealot. So everyone has the right to kill Zimri. So everyone is equally like Pinchas. Pinchas is only acting on it. So they can't kill. The only person who could protect himself is Zimri himself. Zimri, I mean, halachically, not halachically, they could do whatever they could do whatever they're going to do. But if you want to know the halachah is the only person who could protect himself from Pinchas would be Zimri himself. And we're going to learn something very fascinating about who Zimri is. He's not just like some side prince that we never heard of him. We've heard of him before. He just had a different name. This is what's so fascinating about the story and why it's such a complex story. So the pasuk Shimon.
They killed Shimon was who killed when the Dina was slain.
Yes, Shem. Yes. But the verse says Moshe tells the judges to go, and he started this. The question is according to Rashi or according to the Gemara. According to Rashi, Rashi's set gives us the setting. The way Rashi describes us, then the way last week's parsha is that the plague starts, and then the tribe of Shimon comes to Shimon the Zimri. He's their leader, and they say to him, "We're all being punished by death. And where are you? What are you going to do about it to protect us?" And then Zimri does what we're going to learn in a second. But according to the Gemara, it seems like that's not how it worked. That Zimri first started what he did, and then it led to the punishment of the 24,000 that were killed. Who? What do you mean? Oh, sexual. No. It was punishment by a plague. Yeah. And then. The tribesmen of Shimon come to Zimri. They're going to kill us. You're quiet. So what did he do? He gathers around him of his tribesmen 24,000 fellow Jews. He first goes to Kozvi. Who's Kozvi? Kozvi is like the pasuk tells us in this week's parsha. She's that princess, the daughter of the king of Midian, of one of the kings of Midian, the most important of the 5 kings. And he goes to her, and he says to Kozvi, "Hashmi'ili, have sex with me, have relations with me." Amr Loi, she says to him, "Bas melechani, I'm a daughter of a king. My father told me, if you're going to sleep with one of the Jews, make sure it's the top guy because you're a princess." So he says to her, "Afu nasi," he's talking in himself in the third party. "Afu nasi shevetu. I'm also a prince of a tribe. I'm not a nobody. I'll tell you more. Shehu gadol mimenu. He's greater than Moshe. He's greater than him, meaning Moshe. Why? Shimon is the second child of Leah. Levi is only the third child of Leah. So I'm more important than Moshe. So if you want to make sure you're sinning or you're corrupting quality, I'm top tier. This is a good opportunity for you to do what your father wants. Tafsa biblarisea, he grabs her. Vehevia eats a Moshe. He brings her to Moshe. Imagine the scene. Just a horrible scene. This is a public display. Amr Loi, he says to Moshe, in a very derogatory way of talk, Ben Amram, son of Amram. Imagine, that's what he calls Moshe. Son of Amram. Zu asura oimiteris. Is she permissible to me or not? V'im timer, he doesn't give Moshe time to respond. V'im timer asura, if you want to tell me she's forbidden to me, bas yisra mihitir lach. Who allowed you to have marriage with Tzipporah, the daughter of Yisro? Now, he was wrong in saying that. Why is he wrong in saying that? Because Tzipporah was Moshe's wife prior to Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, halachically, Moshe was a seven Noai. So was Tzipporah. They were allowed to get married. They all went through conversion by Matan Torah. So there was no basis for them. I mean, our fathers, the tribes weren't married to Jewish women. And we could even say, even if you want to say Moshe kept Torah, he could have privately converted her. Here he's trying to do an act in public. So, but Moshe is dumbstruck. He has nothing to answer. He doesn't know what to say. Go kulam b'bchi. Everyone starts crying. Rashi says, "What is in our Chumash? Why is everyone crying? They're not crying. They're crying about how Moshe was affected by this story. Moshe, they say, look at Moshe. Moshe was able to stand up in every challenge for 40 years for the Jewish people. Got stumped in such a horrible situation of a shiksa. It says they're crying by the oil mayeh. They're crying. This is a scene in public by the court. What happens? Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar. Pinchas is standing there, and he's watching this horrible scene. He says, I just want to say Rashi quotes. He says, "Bas Yisra mihitrulach mishum koit matar nasa ukshenas natar kulam b'nei noach hayu v'nichnas kulam b'mitzvahs v'hi imam v'goyim rab m'shalev rab." So Rashi again says that the Zimri was wrong to say that to Moshe, because Moshe was allowed to marry Tzipporah, even if he didn't convert her before, because they were all ben Noach, and they all went through conversion by Matan Torah. So by the time everyone became a convert, so did Tzipporah. So that his question wasn't a question, but it wasn't. Sometimes it's not about the conversation, it's not about the facts. There was something going down, and Moshe was. Again, the Rashi says, why was Moshe put in such a corner? Because God wanted Pinchas to get the reward that deserved. Ma Ra'ah. What did it says? Vayar Pinchas. What does Pinchas see? What is he seeing? Amar Rav, so Rav teaches us, Ra'ah Ma'aseh v'niskar halachah. He saw what was happening and he remembered the law. Amar Loi, he says to Moshe, Achi Avi Abba, the brother of my grandfather. Meaning Moshe is Pinchas' great uncle, right? So the brother of his grandfather. Tani, had you not taught us when you came down 40 years ago from the mountain, that someone who publicly has intercourse with a Gentile, a zealot, can could strike down this person. What does Moshe tell him in response? It's a famous answer. Karyana digarta ihu leheve parvakna. He says, let the one who reads the letter be the agent. Means you're saying it, you have to be the zealot. Again, the question is, did Moshe tell him to do it, or just told him, this is the law that I said, I'm not telling you to do, because he's not allowed to tell Pinchas to do it. Pinchas has to act on his own. Shmuel says, another thing, that Rav said that he remembered the law. Shmuel says he saw Pinchas says when the name of God is being desecrated, it's not a time for you to start saying, well, who am I? Moshe Rabbeinu's here, my father Elazar's here, all the other great people are there. If God's name is being desecrated, there's no chachma, there's no tvuna, there's no eitzah, there's no wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. God's honor is being desecrated. I have to act. I'm not asking any questions. When there's a question of the desecration of God's name, it's not time for me to be respectful to Moshe. I have to act. Rabbi Lezer says, he saw that what was happening to the plague. People start to drop dead. This was, again, there's a scene here. It's not a time this is a time for people of action to take action. So what does he do? He comes with the spear. Now he has to come with the spear, like Louis asked, how does he actually do it? And why wasn't Zimri protected by his fellow tribesmen? He has 24,000 people around him, right? chevra. He wasn't he was with protection. So what did he do? First of all, we know it's an important thing. When you go into the base medrash, put your weapons outside. So therefore, he couldn't be. It says he couldn't take the weapon when he went into Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't have the weapon in his hand because you leave your weapons outside. So when you go to shul, unless you're part of the protection plan committee, it's not a place. Not even physical. I'm not talking about physical guns. When you walk into a yeshiva, don't a lot of times when someone came into shul a few 2 years ago. And he comes in, boom, he's attacking, he's being shot. I said, listen, in our show, we leave the guns outside. Relax, take it down a notch, The base medrash is not a place to be aggressive. So aggressive in certain ways. It says, what did he do? So he removed the blade from the ramach, from the spear. So what's it? If you take off the blade, what is a spear? Just a stick, right? What? But it's just a stick. So he's pretending it's his walking stick. He slips the blade into his pocket. Okay, we're turning the next page. And what does he do? He's walking as if he's leaning on his staff. So he's just a person with the staff, another person with the staff. He goes into Shimon. He goes into the point to ground zero. He goes into where this whole happened. Because what happens is, after Zimri goes to Moshe, Moshe is dumbstruck. He takes this Kozvi, and we're going to learn he doesn't have one-time relationship. He has tremendous amounts of relationship. He has over and over and over again. So he goes into the tribe of Shimon. They're all around. They're like Louis said it in the words you used. It was a scene, and he starts talking. He says, "He starts talking in in riddle. He says, "Whoever said Levi's better than Shimon." Like if Shimon could be having fun, I also want to have fun. Why am I so all of a sudden so spiritual? I can't. Amr said, let him in. Surely he also came in to have relations with the non-Jewish woman. He tiru prushim as a davar, and he said, look, even the prushim, the religious ones, they also sometimes need to have. So they let Pinchas inside. He was able to get access. That was the question. How do you at least get inside? So he's able to get access. They thought he was just, you have to remember, Pinchas was also, maybe they thought that he was anyways not in a good place because everyone else is a Kohen, he's not a Kohen. So, maybe they thought that, this was his moment. So, to do another sin. Rabbi Yochanan teaches, Rabbi Yochanan teaches, Shisha Nisu Nasla le Pinchas. There were 6 miracles that happened to Pinchas. Again, there's so many things that could go wrong for Pinchas. Number one is, all Zimri has to do is pull out, and then Pinchas can't do anything. Zimri could shout for help. He has to kill him in the act. He has to show everyone why he killed him. So if Shisha Nisim, the Gemara says 6 miracles happened for Pinchas. Zimri should have pulled out, and he doesn't pull out from Kozvi, from the princess. He should have called out, hey, Pinchas is coming to kill me. He was able to perforate exactly into the male and the female's privates with one that's not so simple, obviously, right? Also, they didn't fall off the spear. He has to hold them like a spit, both of them on the spear, to show everyone that why he killed him. This evidently was happening in a tent. He takes the spear. He has as long, how do you say Hebrew? It's a spear.
A very long, strong arrow.
Okay. So he has to perforate. He has to. And then he put it back in. Once he gets inside the tent, he puts it back in. Yes, that's good. I forgot that. The Gemara doesn't say that, but obviously he puts it back in. He puts back the metal. So now he has the spear, and then he has to be able to put it. He can't just kill him like through his heart. He has to kill him in the place of the intercourse, and then they have to stay on the stick. Yes, because otherwise, then he has to show. Also, he had to show that he was killing them for that reason. Okay. Oh, then what happens? An angel came. So if you would bend down, like just technically, how do you get out of a tent? You have to bend down to go underneath the tent. So the angel came and picked it up. So if you would bend down, they would fall off the stick. You had to be strong. I mean, we find that later he's a general. He's a fighter. I mean, Pinchas lives very long. He lives 300 years. He's He lived very long. He lived to 300 years, I think. Yeah. Your question, why did he have to kill them that way? So Rashi says, people had to see that they were still in together, and they would know. They have to remember, everyone forgot the law. Pinchas remembers the law. There's 600,000 male Jews. There's a lot of people. People have to know what he's doing. So they shouldn't say that he was hateful. Okay. So the Gemara finishes. He went and he put them down before God. He says to God, the Master of the universe, really? Because of these two scumbags, you're going to kill 24,000 Jews? It depends the size of the spear.
With the spear?
But this is not the orbital organ.
You could bleed out. He puts them in front of God and says, this is why you killed 24,000 Jews for these people. He pleads before God. And it doesn't say he prayed, but what does it mean? He kind of said to God a judgment on God. He says, what are you doing? This is not, these are people not worth to get so worked up about. You have to remember what's going on. The angels were not happy at Pinchas. The angels wanted to strike Pinchas. But Pinchas is all of a sudden telling God what to do. God says to the angels, let him be. Kanoi ben Kanoi, he's a zealot, the son of a zealot. Meishiv chema ben Meishiv chema. He calmed down my nerves. The son, when it comes down. Why is he a zealot, the son of a zealot? Because he said his grandfather Levi killed the city of Shechem. That was also an act of zealotry. Okay, so we have 2 more minutes. Let's go. It's chilu shvatim vazinoisai. What happens after he does this? The zealot, the rest of his tribe start making fun of Pinchas. Look at this guy, Pinchas. What he did, his grandfather was fattening cows for idols, and all of a sudden he becomes a zealot. He kills the prince of Israel. Why was he a son of who was his grandfather? Because Elazar was married also Yisro's daughter. It says that Elazar married, so he was also, Yisro was Pinchas' grandfather. Gemara in Tractate says, we're not sure if it was his mother's father, his mother's father's father. He was both from Yosef and he was from Yisro. So they said, "Oh, who's Pinchas?" All of a sudden, he's a special person. We remember his grandfather. His grandfather was fattening cows for the idols, and all of a sudden, he's a zealot for God. So that's what the pasuk says in this week's parsha. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Pinchas, the Gemara, the Torah says no. He's a special person. He's not just anyone. He's the son of Elazar. He's the grandson of Aaron, the high priest. God even has to tell Moshe, give him peace. Moshe was not sure how to reward Pinchas. I give him the covenant of peace. He's worthy. What he accomplished, that it should be something that should be remembered forever. That him and his descendants should be Kohanim for all times. The Gemara, we're going to stop here. The Gemara finishes off to say about Kozvi. Just I want to finish off the last piece. We asked, who is Zimri? It talks about the tremendous amount of relationships this Zimri had. One opinion is he had 600 or 20,000. I mean, he's like, obviously was an able person. Arba meyes ve'esrim ve'arba be'iles. He had intercourse with her 424 times. Go figure. Okay, so the Gemara finishes off like this, that who is Zimri? The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, you finish off the Gemara over here, Rabbi Yochanan says, Hamesh Shemes Yesh Lo Zimri, he had 5 names. Ben Salui, his name was Ben Salui. Shaul ben Aknan, Zimri ben Salui, Shaul ben Aknanis, his name comes up in the beginning. Shimon's daughter of the Canaanite, meaning some people say that was Dinah was his mother. Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai. Who's Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai? He's one of the princes who offers this sacrifices to sanctify the temple. Means he's a prince all the way from the beginning of time. How he lived so long is a question, because he should have died with the generation of the spies. He lives all the way to the end. He's a person who's a prince for 40 years, and this is his fall in life. Zimri is because having so much relationships, his semen kind of went like a rotten egg. Ben Soli al Shehisli Avonis al Mishpachtei, he brought sin on his family. Shal Shehishal Atzma Baraveira, he gave himself over to sin. Ben Kananis, he acted like a Canaan. And what is his name? The Gemara says Shlumiel ben Tzuri Shaddai. Again, this is someone who we know from the beginning of Midbar. He is one of the princes that dedicate the temple, the tabernacle, and unfortunately,